you who don't know me, I'm Elaine, and I call Mounties home. This is where we worship. And you might know my mom, Son, who's part of Gladys's group. Well, maybe you know my sister, Ime, and her husband, Steve, a lot better. So I've been married to Colin for 24 years. We've got 4 children, aged 19, 17, 15, and 12. I grew up sort of in a Christian household with my mom taking us to Sunday school every Sunday. I gave my heart to Jesus at 12, got baptized at 17, but it wasn't until I was 25 when I truly surrendered everything to the Lord. And that was when I had a major encounter with God through a vision. And it was then that I started to develop a relationship with Christ. And I still am learning to walk in the Spirit and the Word. But through the years, I've seen God speak and work through visions and dreams, through prophetic words, through healing, word of knowledge, and often, very often, just in the quietness of His presence. So for the longest time, life was perfect. Life was good. It was smooth sailing. I didn't have any major dramas in life until 5 years ago, in June 2016, I started to get indigestion for 2 weeks. And that was all it was, indigestion, not with every meal, mainly with oily Chinese hawker food. So, and I'm married to a radiation oncologist, and those of you who are married to a doctor, I feel your pain. You get no sympathy. It's with all health professionals. So indigestion was definitely down on the list. But something was different this time. Something in my spirit actually told me there's a mass in there that should not be there. And because we have heard God's voice before, we have walked with God, we know that when God speaks, we better listen. And because of that, Colin organized for me to have an ultrasound. And honestly, I was kind of expecting stomach ulcer. But that morning, I knew something wasn't right, because within half an hour, they called him and we had a CAT scan done. The very next day, his colleagues organized for me to have a biopsy. And unfortunately, the biopsy came back with 3rd stage pancreatic cancer. So, pancreatic cancer was Colin's area of specialty. It's one of his areas, and he knew exactly what that meant. We had a PET scan done the very next day, and praise God, it only showed spread to the local area, to the duodenum and the lymph nodes, and nowhere else. And for that, I was grateful. I was only 43 years old at that time. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I was the fittest I've ever been. I was going to the gym 5 times a week at that stage. I was running maybe 3 times a week. We ate healthy. And, my youngest at that time was 7 years old, and my oldest was 13. And in that instant, my perfect world just turned upside down. Everything felt like it came crashing down. I can't even begin to describe it. But yet in all of that, I had a sense of peace to a certain degree. I wasn't afraid of death. I was very confident I knew where I was going, but it didn't mean that I wasn't sad. I didn't want to miss all those milestones. I didn't want my kids to grow up without a mom. And Colin and I always said that we were going to grow to 100 years old, hold hands, and the Lord will take us both away at the same time. That was our goal. It still is our goal. So for that whole first week of diagnosis, Colin and I cried ourselves to sleep every single night. But in our sadness, we made a choice. We decided that no matter what the outcome, we are going to still praise our God. Because of what he did on that cross, he is worthy to be praised. And that does not change. So in the first week of my diagnosis, whenever I prayed, an image kept coming back to me, and it was an image of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fire with God. And I knew my God was with me in that fire. He is going to walk with me. He's going to walk me through it. A week after my diagnosis, very close friends of ours, the Davies, flew over from Newcastle just for 7 hours. They flew over, left their 4 kids, and they came and ministered to us. They prayed with us. And as they prayed, I saw an image again, but this time I saw God outside of that furnace. And in an instant, I knew then and then, my God is going to deliver me. He is going to bring me out of that fire, just as he did for them. And you know, that whole sense of peace beyond understanding, a joy so everlasting and so intense. I've experienced this peace before, but never to that intensity. And it was so overwhelming that from that day, even if we wanted to cry, we could not cry because that joy was just so overwhelming. And this really prepared me for the Whipple surgery. 11 days after my diagnosis, I had to have the biggest abdominal surgery one could have. And it came with a 10% risk of dying from the surgery itself, something I didn't know at that time. But when I went into theatre, I went in with so much peace and joy that even the anaesthetist asked, "What is it about you that is just so peaceful and calm?" And he gave me an opportunity to speak about my Jesus. And Colin said I probably talked too much. So the surgery lasted 8 hours. They removed my duodenum, gallbladder, the head of my pancreas, a third of my stomach, and 19 lymph nodes. So I'm half the woman I used to be. After the operation and further testing, they changed my diagnosis from 3rd stage pancreatic cancer to 3rd stage duodenal cancer. And I know it doesn't sound great, but trust me, anything's better than pancreatic cancer. Colin says pancreatic cancer is like a death sentence. So, unfortunately though, my duodenal cancer is rather rare. They had to send stuff off to the US for it to be looked at. And mine turned out to be an aggressive form. So it was good news, but still not so good news. However, as Colin always reminds me, when God is involved, prognosis and statistics do not matter because it's a whole new ballgame. So I recovered really well post-surgery, was out of ICU within 24 hours, much to the surprise of the medical team, and they were planning discharge within a week until I hit a roadblock because they removed 19 lymph nodes. My whole lymphatic system was totally disrupted. I couldn't eat solid foods because whenever I ate, instead of my body absorbing the essential fats and nutrients, it was actually leaking out through my lymphatics into the abdominal cavity. And so I had 2 tubes coming out into a bag on each side, and they would drain the fluid every day. They tried various medical interventions, injections 3 times a day. They tried the MCT diet 3 cycles, and each cycle my surgeon said, "Oh, don't worry, it will work. It always works." Second time, same thing. Definitely, it's never not worked. It will work. And third time, he said the same thing. And finally, they decided I needed a lymphangiogram just to look at where the leak was coming from. But the procedure itself would seal up all the leaks. And guess what? It didn't work. So I now hold the record for my surgeon's longest leaking lymphatic patient. I don't think he was too pleased with that. So after 3 weeks in hospital, I really wanted to go home. And they decided to send me home with, they took one bag out, but I still had another bag of fluid. And Colin, I couldn't eat solid foods, so Colin would hook me up to a bag of IV nutrients. So I had my, lasagna, char kway teow, whatever. I just imagined it was good. And I would just get fed through IV so that I would survive. And let me tell you, it is hard watching other people eat. So ladies, when you can eat, forget about the extra kilo, just go and have dessert and the extra cake. Honestly, eat when you can. So in hospital, my leaking lymphatics was, it leaked about